The moment I pressed record on my phone, I knew there was no going back. But after what Marcus Thornfield had just said about me in that conference room, I was beyond caring about corporate protocol. "She's lucky to be here." His voice echoed through the glass walls of our downtown Chicago office. I mean, diversity hires are great for optics, but let's be realistic about her actual contributions to this firm. I stood frozen outside the conference room, my heart pounding against my ribs like a trapped bird. 6 years at Pinnacle Strategic Solutions. 6 years of 60-hour weeks, of landing clients worth millions, of building relationships that kept our firm competitive in Chicago's brutal legal market. And this is what Marcus Thornfield, our managing partner, really thought of me. Sarah Chen from HR shifted uncomfortably in her chair, her usually perfect posture sagging. "Marcus, I don't think we should be discussing individual employees in these terms. Look, Sarah, I'm not saying Vanessa isn't adequate, but when we're discussing partnership track, we need to consider the full picture. She's had advantages that others haven't. Affirmative action, diversity quotas, these things matter when we're making decisions about the future of this firm. Advantages. The word hit me like a physical blow, stealing the breath from my lungs. My Columbia Law degree, earned while working 3 jobs to pay for school. My 14 years of experience, starting as a paralegal and clawing my way up through sheer determination. My track record of success that spoke for itself in billable hours and client satisfaction ratings. Apparently none of that mattered. I was just a checkbox on their diversity scorecard. I glanced at my phone screen, watching the seconds tick by. 3 minutes and 47 seconds of pure, unfiltered discrimination. In Illinois, a one-party consent state, this recording was perfectly legal, and it was about to become Marcus's worst nightmare. "What about the Morrison account?" Sarah asked, clearly trying to steer the conversation away from dangerous territory. Vanessa single-handedly saved that relationship when they were considering switching firms. Marcus waved dismissively, his expensive Rolex catching the afternoon light. Anyone could have handled Morrison. The client was just being emotional. These things work themselves out. I almost laughed out loud. The Morrison account had been a nightmare of complex international tax law and regulatory compliance. I'd spent 3 months working 18-hour days, coordinating with attorneys across 4 different countries, and personally flying to their headquarters in Detroit 6 times to smooth over a relationship that had been damaged by Marcus's own arrogance. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see the October wind whipping through the streets below, sending fallen leaves swirling in tiny tornadoes of gold and crimson. The trees lining Michigan Avenue were putting on their final show before winter, and I felt a strange kinship with them. Beautiful, resilient, and about to shed everything that no longer served them. The elevator ride to my office felt like an eternity. I stared at my reflection in the polished steel doors, seeing not the successful attorney I'd worked so hard to become, but a woman who'd been systematically diminished despite her achievements. My tailored navy suit, my perfectly styled hair, my confident posture. None of it mattered if people like Marcus would always see me as less than. But as the elevator dinged and the doors opened onto the 32nd floor, something shifted inside me. Marcus thought I was lucky to be here. He was about to learn just how unlucky he was to have underestimated me. 3 days later, I sat across from Elena Rodriguez in the private dining room of the Signature Room, 95 floors above the Magnificent Mile. The restaurant's floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of Chicago's skyline, with Lake Michigan stretching endlessly toward the horizon, like a sheet of hammered silver. Elena was the chief legal officer of Meridian Industries, our biggest client, and the woman who had specifically requested me as her primary contact when they'd signed with us 2 years ago. At 43, she commanded respect in every room she entered, her success built on a foundation of brilliant legal strategy and unwavering integrity. "You seem distracted, Vanessa," Elena said, cutting into her salmon with surgical precision. Her dark eyes, sharp with intelligence, missed nothing. "Everything all right at Pinnacle?" I hesitated, swirling my wine glass and watching the Chardonnay catch the afternoon light. Elena had become more than a client over the past 2 years. She'd become a mentor, someone who understood the unique challenges we faced as women of color in corporate law. Her great-grandparents had immigrated from Mexico with nothing but determination, and she'd built an empire on their foundation. "Can I be completely honest with you?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Elena set down her fork and leaned forward. Always. That's why I trust you, Vanessa. You've never sugar-coated anything. Never told me what you thought I wanted to hear. I told her everything. The recording. Marcus's comments. The way I'd been systematically excluded from key decisions despite my performance metrics consistently ranking in the top 5% of the firm. I explained how my client interactions had been increasingly filtered through Marcus, how my billable hours had been redistributed to other attorneys for partnership consideration. Elena listened without interruption, her expression growing colder with each detail. Her manicured fingers drummed silently against the white tablecloth, a tell I'd learned to recognize during our most challenging negotiations. "Son of a bitch," she finally said, her professional composure cracking. "I've been wondering why my requests for updates kept getting filtered through Marcus instead of coming directly from you. I thought maybe you were being promoted to bigger accounts." "What do you mean?" 3 weeks ago, I specifically asked for you to handle our upcoming acquisition of Hartwell Technologies. It's a complex deal involving international IP transfers and regulatory compliance across multiple jurisdictions. Elena's jaw tightened. "Marcus told me you were overwhelmed with current commitments and assigned it to David Kim instead." My stomach dropped. David Kim was talented, but he'd only been with the firm for 3 years and had never handled an international acquisition of that magnitude. "Elena, I never even knew about the Hartwell deal. This is the first I'm hearing of it. That's what I was afraid of." Elena's voice was ice cold now. "I should have known something was wrong when a 28-year-old associate with no international experience was suddenly my point person on a $200 million deal." The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. Marcus hadn't just been undermining me internally. He'd been sabotaging my client relationships, ensuring I looked incompetent while positioning himself as the indispensable intermediary. "Elena, I need to ask you something. Are you satisfied with Pinnacle's service?" She leaned back in her chair, studying me with intensity. "I'm satisfied with your service, Vanessa. I'm less impressed with your firm's recent management decisions. The quality of work has declined noticeably since Marcus started inserting himself into our relationship. What if I told you I was considering other options?" A slow smile spread across Elena's face. "I'd say it's about time. And I'd also say that Meridian Industries values loyalty to people who've earned it, not institutions that take it for granted." The Chicago skyline glittered beyond the restaurant's windows, a testament to the ambition of generations who'd refused to accept limitations. Somewhere in one of those towers, Marcus was probably congratulating himself on another successful day. He had no idea that his biggest client was about to become his biggest problem. The law offices of Harrison and Associates occupied an entire floor of a gleaming tower in Chicago's Loop, 37 floors above the street, where elevated trains carried commuters to their daily battles. Unlike Pinnacle's cold marble and glass aesthetic, this place felt warm, professional, like a firm that actually cared about its people. Margaret Harrison's office was a study in understated elegance, with rich mahogany furniture and floor-to-ceiling bookshelves filled with legal texts and first editions. At 62, she radiated the kind of confidence that came from decades of winning battles in courtrooms and boardrooms alike. "Your reputation precedes you, Vanessa," Margaret said, gesturing for me to take a seat. "Elena Rodriguez spoke very highly of you when she called. She said you were the most skilled attorney she'd worked with in 15 years of practice. I'd been there for 2 hours, discussing partnership opportunities, compensation packages, and the kind of support system I'd never had at Pinnacle. Margaret had offered me a base salary that was 30% higher than what I was making, plus a partnership track based on merit rather than politics. I'm not just looking for a new job, Margaret. I'm looking for a new home. And I'm not coming alone." Margaret's eyebrows raised with interest. "Oh, 3 of Pinnacle's best attorneys are ready to move with me. We're talking about a combined book of business worth approximately $12 million in annual revenue." I pulled out my tablet, showing her the carefully compiled data. "James Sullivan, their top litigation specialist. He's been marginalized ever since he filed a complaint about Marcus's management style. He's won 87% of his cases over the past 5 years." Margaret studied the numbers. "Impressive. What's his situation?" "He's been passed over for partnership 3 times despite bringing in more revenue than anyone else in litigation. Marcus told him he needed to be more of a team player. And the others? Patricia Wong, their leading corporate attorney. She's been passed over for promotion 3 times despite bringing in more clients than anyone else. She speaks fluent Mandarin and has cultivated relationships with several major Chinese corporations. Marcus has been taking credit for her work while questioning her commitment. I swiped to the next page. And Robert Jackson, their rising star in intellectual property law, he's been vocal about the firm's diversity issues and systematically excluded from high-profile cases as a result. Margaret leaned back, processing the information. This is substantial. What's the timeline? I give my notice tomorrow. The others will follow within the week. Elena Rodriguez has indicated that Meridian Industries will transition their business to whatever firm I join. And you're certain about this course of action? I thought about Marcus's words, about years of subtle discrimination, about clients redirected away from me. I've never been more certain of anything in my life. The next morning, I stood in my office at Pinnacle, boxing up 6 years of my professional life. The autumn sun streamed through the windows, illuminating the certificates on my wall, the client thank you notes I'd treasured, the photos from company events where I'd always felt slightly out of place. My phone buzzed with a text from James. Just submitted my resignation. Marcus's face was priceless. I think he actually turned purple. Another from Patricia. HR wants to schedule an exit interview. Should I mention the recording? I smiled, feeling lighter than I had in months. Save it for the lawyers, I typed back. The call came at 9:47 a.m. on a Tuesday, exactly 3 weeks after I'd submitted my resignation. I was in my new corner office at Harrison & Associates, 30 floors above the Chicago River, watching morning commuters stream across the bridges like ants carrying the city's economic engine. Marcus's voice was strained when I answered, barely controlled desperation leaking through his professional veneer. Vanessa, we need to talk. Can you come in today? It's urgent. I'm afraid that's not possible, Marcus. I'm in meetings all day with my new clients. Actually, I'm booked solid for the next 3 weeks. A pause, the kind of silence that speaks volumes about panic. Your new clients? Well, technically they're my old clients. They just followed me to Harrison & Associates. You know how it is. Client relationships are built on trust and competence, not institutional loyalty. I leaned back in my chair, savoring the moment. My assistant had just informed me that 3 more attorneys from Pinnacle had submitted resignations, and 2 major clients had requested meetings about transitioning their business relationships. Look, Vanessa, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Some of the things said in that meeting, they weren't meant the way they sounded. Actually, Marcus, I think there's been perfect understanding. You said I was lucky to be here. Turns out you were right. I was lucky to realize that I deserved better. Through my office window, I could see the Pinnacle building 8 blocks away, its glass facade reflecting the morning sun. I wondered if Marcus was looking out his window too, watching his former star attorney's new domain. Elena Rodriguez is threatening to sue us for breach of contract, Marcus continued, his voice cracking. She's claiming we misrepresented our team capabilities, that we promised her access to specific attorneys, and then failed to deliver. That's unfortunate. She's also claiming discrimination. She says she has evidence. Recordings, documentation, witness testimony. Vanessa, please tell me you didn't what, Marcus? Didn't document the discrimination I experienced? Didn't share the truth with clients who trusted my judgment? The silence stretched between us, filled with 3 weeks of mounting consequences. Harrison & Associates had gained 4 new clients and 3 experienced attorneys, while Pinnacle had been hemorrhaging business. The Morrison account terminated their contract yesterday, Marcus said finally. They specifically cited changes in service quality and lack of access to preferred counsel. They're moving to your firm. Morrison was always relationship-driven. They valued personal attention and expertise over institutional prestige. Vanessa, please. We can work this out. Full partnership, equity stake, your own practice group. Whatever you want. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out over the city that had shaped me. Chicago had always been a place where merit mattered, where hard work could overcome any obstacle. Marcus, let me give you some advice. You might want to call your insurance company. Professional liability claims can be expensive, especially when they involve systematic discrimination. And probably your lawyer. Actually, definitely your lawyer. My phone buzzed with a text from Elena. Pinnacle's stock price dropped 18% this morning. Word is spreading that they're a liability risk. 3 more of their major clients have requested meetings with us. I smiled, thinking about the recording that had started it all. You know what the irony is, Marcus? You were right about one thing. I was lucky, but not in the way you thought. I was lucky to discover my true value. Vanessa, the firm is in serious trouble. We're facing multiple lawsuits. We've lost 30% of our revenue. Doesn't that mean anything to you? I thought about the 6 years I'd spent building relationships, winning cases, contributing to Pinnacle's success, the late nights, the sacrificed weekends, the personal costs of dedication to a firm that had never truly valued me. You know what, Marcus? It does mean something. It means that actions have consequences. It means that treating people as disposable eventually catches up with you. But mostly it means that I was right to leave. Because while Pinnacle is crumbling, I'm building something better. Something based on merit, respect, and the radical idea that talent deserves recognition regardless of where it comes from. I hung up and turned back to my desk, where contracts for 3 new clients were waiting. My phone was ringing with calls from attorneys wanting to join our growing team. Margaret Harrison appeared in my doorway, a satisfied smile on her face. I just got off the phone with the Illinois State Bar Association. They're recommending Harrison and Associates for their Diversity and Inclusion Award. That's wonderful news. There's more. The Chicago Business Journal wants to do a feature story on our firm's expansion. They're calling it The New Face of Legal Excellence. I thought about the scared, frustrated woman who had stood outside that conference room 3 weeks ago. She couldn't have imagined that her moment of decision would lead to this. Schedule it, I said, and make sure they know this is just the beginning. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting mad. Sometimes it's getting everything you deserve and proving that the person who was lucky to be here was actually the key to everything that made the place worth being.